This video provides a brief introduction to the new ExcelRT application. ExcelRT is a standalone application that runs on many desktop platforms including Mac, Windows and Linux, and mobile platforms like iOS and Android. The idea behind ExcelRT is you can start with an Excel workbook that you author in Microsoft Excel on either a Mac or Windows computer. You can then run it through a conversion process with a tool that runs on Windows to convert it into a platform-neutral ExcelRT file. With additional tools, you can then turn that into a protected licensed product that can be distributed across all these different platforms that are supported by ExcelRT. And the user running on those different desktop or mobile platforms does not require Microsoft Excel. The process starts by authoring a workbook with Microsoft Excel. Here we see the original workbook, and this is for a travel expense calculator where an employee can put a line for each trip they take and collect the information. They can also change some of the values, like for example they could change the cost per mile, and then you'd see the calculations ripple through the workbook. Now you could take and protect this workbook and sell it as a protected application. However, if you did that, it could only be run on platforms where Microsoft Excel is supported. Each of your customers would also have to buy a copy of Microsoft Excel before they could even run your product. And they'd also have to contend with all the menus and the ribbons that are great for authoring a workbook, but not so great for an end user that just wants to enter data and use the end result of your workbook. So let's take a look at when we take this file that was authored in Microsoft Excel, we run it through the conversion process, we produce the platform neutral ExcelRT file, and let's take a look at what that looks like when we open it into ExcelRT. So here we see the overall look of the workbook is about the same. There's no ribbon structure or menus to speak of. And the user can again enter the data. They can change a value. For example, let's change this to 60, for example, 60 cents a mile, and we see the calculations ripple through the workbook. An ExcelRT file can be wrapped into a protected Mac or Windows application using Quick License. During the wrapping process, you can apply a custom icon as we've done here. When the protected application is launched on a customer computer, an optional license agreement can be presented that the user can confirm, and then they'll be presented with some type of activation dialog. You can use either an online activation dialog that requires serial number activation on first launch, or a manual activation process, which is illustrated here, where the dialog shows a request number unique to that computer. The customer gives that to you, and within Quick License you generate a unique activation code for that computer that will allow the activation to be activated. Once activated, the Open Data File interface window is presented with various buttons as you've customized during the wrapping process. So in addition to these buttons, additional buttons for organizing a list of data files from your original workbook can be set up so that you can organize it into different folders and sort them and other things like that. But here we've got a fairly simple interface where if the user clicks new, they're prompted for a name, and in this case we'll call this Travel Calc Tom, and that's basically a copy of your ExcelRT file that can be then opened into ExcelRT by double clicking. To illustrate, let's just create a couple other copies of that original file. So we'll call this one Sally, so that'll be the travel information for Sally, and we'll do another one for Frank. So when the user actually double clicks into one of these, that's when the ExcelRT file will be presented, and they'll be able to add their information about all their trips they've taken and the information they're collecting for each of those trips, and enter information, the calculations will occur and such. When they close out of the ExcelRT, they'll be presented with a yes/no dialog. Again, that's an optional feature. There's a lot of optional things that you can customize when you're originally setting up the add license wrapping tool that comes with Quick License to build a protected application. And here, once we've exited out of that ExcelRT file, we're returned back to our interface window, which we can go and work on a different project or a different job, or quit the application altogether. Let's look at a different way to distribute your application with ExcelRT. In this case, ExcelRT acts as a shared application that can host one or more products. When we launch the application, we'll be presented with a dialog that will show a list of all the installed products. Right now there are no installed products, so we can click the download button and enter a URL to download a product into the application. We have some samples here. We'll click the samples button. We're going to select this product and then click to download. It's now been downloaded and installed in the application, and if we select that product, we'll see a brief description. This particular product uses the Quick License licensing system, although in addition to Quick License, you can also use Cloud License to license your shared applications, and that will work across all platforms on the desktop like Mac, Windows, or Linux, or also mobile platforms like Android or iOS. So the first time we click to run a product, we'll be presented with an activation dialog to actually activate it. Again, we can use a manual or online serial number activation process. Once activated, we'll be presented with the Open Data File interface window and all the configured buttons that we have off to the side here. We can click a button, and we're going to name a specific copy of our workbook, which gets added to the list, and we can create as many different copies as we want with different names. And then when we double click, we're launched into the ExcelRT application itself. When we close the application, we're presented with a yes/no dialog if that's the way we've got it set up, and then we're returned back to the desktop. We're running ExcelRT in an iOS device like an iPhone or an iPad. We're actually using Apple's iOS simulator to make it easier to record the video. So to add a product to this application, we go to the download menu, enter the URL, and click download. We also have some samples here. We'll go ahead and load one of those. Now we've installed the product, and if we go to the product screen, we see it listed there. And if we launch the product, we'll be presented with an activation dialog. Here it's using the Cloud License system to activate this product. And so the user will type in the serial number and other information being requested. And then when they click to activate now, the application is activated, and then they can launch it. When they launch it for the first time, they'll see the familiar Open Data File interface window where they can create various instances of the workbook. So we'll create one for Tom, and then we'll create another instance of the workbook for Sally. And then when they actually launch into that instance of the workbook, there we see it displayed within ExcelRT. If the user wants to move around for a large workbook, they can use their finger and drag the scroll around within the workbook area. Or if they want to edit a cell, if they double tap on it, they can change the value of that cell. Here we'll change to 60 cents. And once it changes, you see it ripple through all the calculations within the workbook. Let's install a second product in ExcelRT on iOS. So again, we'll go to our download menu and download the product, and then from the product menu we see it's been added. If we launch it to activate, we'll have to enter a serial number again. And once we activate the product, we can then double click to launch it just like before. We see the familiar Open Data File Interface window. We created an instance of the workbook. And here's the second instance of that workbook. So when we double click into the workbook, in this case we're going to see that the workbook actually consists of multiple sheets. And once it's been loaded, it will take you to the first sheet, which we see here. So to navigate to a different sheet of this multi-sheet workbook, we just back up a level. We see a list of all the different sheets and then click on the one we want to go to. On any of these sheets, we can zoom in or zoom out. You may need to do that if you're on a very small screen like a small iPhone.